The battle for Ohio Part 2 concludes the regular season for the Bengals and the Browns, but what's at stake? Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? I'm Jake Liscow from the Locked On Bengals podcast, joined today by Jeff Lloyd from Locked On Browns as we dive into the last crossover of the regular season, the last crossover of the season period for the Cincinnati Bengals here on the Locked On Podcast Network. You can find Locked On Bengals, Locked On Browns on YouTube or anywhere you get your podcasts. And as always, this crossover episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. And Jeff, this battle for Ohio feels very different to Bengals fans this week. There's next to nothing on the line for either team. Goal number one is probably still to win the game, even if the Browns don't play their starters. And as of the time of recording, Kevin Stefanski has not announced one way or another which way he's going there. Number two, it's get out of the game healthy. Get out of the regular season as healthy as possible for teams that have dealt with numerous key injuries this year.
Well, I mean, you flash forward to where we are here from where we were week one, Jake. Obviously, so much anticipation. Obviously, that first week one matchup, the Browns, obviously looking as the Bengals, basically were the benchmark of the AFC North the last couple of seasons. And unfortunately, for Cincinnati, a lot of it was driven, of course, around, Joe Burrow and Joe that Thursday night. And I still remember it vividly and just, understanding and, just thinking about, and you kind of knew what was coming. And look, Jake Browning obviously played well. Obviously, maybe some of the bloom came off the rose, so to speak, over the last couple of weeks, as, moments got a little bit tighter, teams maybe got a little bit more film on him and understood some tendencies. And, if anybody's sympathetic to that situation, obviously as Cleveland Browns fans, will they be? No. Should they be? Yes. Now for the Browns, it's a tricky slope here when you go into a game like this. The Browns have been so banged up this entire year. And, for where the Browns are injury wise, we should not be talking, playoffs. We should not be talking about resting significant players in week 18. This is usually not the way the script works for a team that dealt as much as the Browns did. You probably think there's no way you can afford to play Joe Flacco. I mean, look, how in the world could you put, a playoff game in the hands of PJ Walker, God forbid, Myles Garrett. There's probably no reason Myles Garrett should be on this field on Sunday as well. Even though, he is obviously, their most dominant player on the defensive side of the ball, and so many other people's success happens because of what Myles can do or the attention that Myles does draw. There is also the part of, do the Browns truly want to win this game? Could mean something. The other thing is the Browns are a very analytic team. So there's one part of the analytics that tell you, don't play these guys. Don't play them. But then you go back and now you start to look at the history and the success rate of teams that did shut down guys. And look, for some teams, it worked and it's never been an issue. For some teams, when they kind of shut down the engine and you tried to fire it back up again 14 days later, 13 days later, for the Browns case, it'll be more like 17, 18 days later, the success hasn't necessarily been there. So it's, and Coach Stefanski, the thing with Coach is he's always going to give you the coach speak. So he could know darn well in the back of his head, I have no intention of playing X, Y, and Z, but he's not going to make anything easier on the Cincinnati Bengals. Would it make a difference? No, but it's also just the way he's wired. Or it could be that he is looking at these analytic numbers after the weekend and saying, maybe if we just put him out there a bit. So it's a real tough slope, obviously, here. Browns just want to get through this one. Nothing is going to change for them. They are the 5 seed. They are locked in. As much crazy confusion as there is still in the AFC. We have no idea who's going to win the AFC South. Could the AFC South get 2 teams into the playoffs? Buffalo could go from winning the AFC East to not even being involved in the playoffs. Miami could go from being everyone's AFC darling number 1 seed to maybe just getting a 6th seed. But the one and the few is obviously Baltimore Ravens. And of course, the Cleveland Browns. They know exactly where they are. Nothing's going to change change for them. So for the Browns, it's basically make the trip down there, obviously get through 60 minutes of football. You win, it's great. You lose, didn't matter. And just get back up to Cleveland as fast as you possibly can. And by that time, they will absolutely know who their opponent is going to be. And luckily for them, any one of the three opponents that they're going to play in the first round of the playoffs are all teams they already beaten at this point. So they do kind of have some idea of what they're going to be getting into. But it's just trying to play it out here. It's a weird scenario. Obviously, I'm not familiar with this, covering this team for 7 seasons now. So it does kind of feel like, like a dress rehearsal that doesn't matter, because business will really pick up for the Browns once this game in Cincinnati is over on Sunday.
Of course, pride is on the line. If nothing else, the outcome of the game has no impact on playoff seeding. For the Bengals, it has an impact on their draft position, which is not something that coaches or players care about at all, something that fans certainly care about. And, when you talk about these sorts of games, the long-term strategy to get guys healthy out of the season, why risk further injury to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, who both played through shoulder and hamstring injuries respectively on Sunday? Why put them out there and risk those injuries becoming worse going into the offseason, where there's going to be conversations around extending Jamar Chase. There's going to be conversations about how they want to proceed with T. Higgins on the franchise tag or not. So on both sides, I think there are valid questions about playing starters. And if I'm running the Cleveland Browns, I don't see how this is even a question. You've dealt with so many injuries already at so many spots. Why would I risk Amari Cooper or Elijah Moore or Joe Flacco, who's playing well, or David Njoku, or any of the offensive linemen that are playing well? Certainly, to talk about the defensive stars that seem to be the engine for this team, not to take anything away from the offense. It's been getting positive results lately, but Myles Garrett, Zadarius Smith, Dalvin Tomlinson, JOK, Denzel Ward, even Martin Emerson. Like, why would I put those guys on the field when I have a playoff run that I'm trying to get through ahead of me, trying to ride a Joe Flacco heater to Joe Flacco's second heater Super Bowl? Like, if I'm the Cleveland Browns, that's my mentality. And if I'm the Bengals, Zach Taylor's talking about wanting to put on a good show for the fans who come out and support. Totally get that. The players aren't going to tank. There's still pride there. These teams still hate each other. We just saw with the Bengals and the Chiefs that, a lot of guys are missing. But while that game is going, and they were, polite after the game, at least the conversations captured between, Travis Kelce, Chris Jones, and Joe Burrow after the game, but those teams still hate each other. Jamar Chase getting in a fight and a few pushing matches in the middle of that game. And a lot of that still exists between these teams as well. The Bengals 0-5 in the AFC North as well, with a healthy Joe Burrow for 0 of those games. That will, of course, remain the case this week, but teams in this position all the time want to win the game going into the offseason. Marvin Lewis, when he was the head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals, had a long history of winning this game when seasons went awry to feel good going into the offseason. And so that will have to be the goal for the Bengals from a football perspective, from a team perspective. But from the outside looking in, the priorities to me, and we'll talk about a few more of these because there are some other things for the Bengals to get out of this game, but health for the stars and the future pieces of both teams, I think, and for the playoff pieces for the Browns, I think that's a priority for both teams. And just trying to get through this game healthy, and obviously they'll try to win with whoever they put on the field. More to talk about with this game as far as who could be on the field, who won't be on the field, and some other goals for the Bengals. We'll get to those topics coming up next. This crossover episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. And if there are some things that you want to change or keep the same in 2024, if you're already crushing it somewhere in particular, think maybe the opposite of New Year, New You. Around New Year's, we think maybe too much about what we want to change instead of expanding on what you're already doing right and embedding those good habits a little bit stronger. So maybe you finally organize a part of your space. You want to tackle another. Maybe you're getting really good about taking those supplements every morning, getting to the gym. Now you want to add breakfast to that routine. Therapy helps you find your strengths. You can ditch the extreme resolutions and make changes that really stick. And BetterHelp will make all of that very easy. If you're thinking of starting therapy, no easier way to do it than with BetterHelp. Entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, suited to your schedule. And all you have to do to get started is fill out a brief questionnaire, which will match you with a licensed therapist according to your answers to those questions, so you get matched with someone who can suit your needs. Celebrate the progress you've already made by visiting BetterHelp at betterhelp.com/lockedon. You'll get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Jeff, outside of health and obviously pride, getting an AFC North win for the Bengals, finishing the season on a strong note for both teams, carrying momentum, keeping the rust off, whatever it is, there are some other things that matter for the Bengals looking into the future. What do you think the most important thing is for the Browns to get out of this game?
I think, a couple of things is you're going to look at the tackles. Obviously, Jerron Christian, James Hubbard, and now the Browns starting tackles. This has been this way since the second Raymond game. Now, are these guys playing great? No, but they're also not starters. When you're on offensive tackle 4 and 5, you're hoping that they are not the reason you're losing games. And to these guys' credit, obviously they have played that well. An establishment of the run game to come back here. This has always been one of the biggest strengths of the Cleveland Browns offense during the time of the Kevin Stefanski regime. And it basically had been dormant here for a while. Yes, is some of that Nick Chubb? Is some of it the offensive line's just not performing the way they have in years past? Yes, all is a combination. But some of these weeks, not even Nick Chubb was going to succeed. The offensive tackles have struggled at times. The Browns were smart against the Jets, and as opposed to trying to rely so much heavy on wide zone. And the Browns have been doing a really nice job with these trap play action passes. And we were all kind of making jokes like, well, are they going to start to run a couple of traps? And they started to do so against the New York Jets. And look, if your 3 best offensive linemen are your right guard, your center, and your left guard, and you think that your tackles, are holding water, so to speak, then yeah, the emphasis should be to try to obviously run in the interior a little bit more. They were able to do that. The Kareem Hunt touchdown run was an example this past week. But, you get into playoff games and nobody wants to get in the shootouts. You have the lead. You want to be able to stall the game out. Hopefully you can do that, or at least, make drives go longer, keep the opponent off the field by running the ball. They were able to do that with better success against the Jets. For the most of the time here that Joe has been the starter, this was 5 starts to this point. It has not really been a solid running effort. They've been able to pick it up, obviously, this past week, but that's something they kind of need to get back to here. The defensive side of the ball, there are guys they think are coming back. None of them would be back for this game. They're not going to ask Agbanai Okoronkwo to play with, whatever severity torn pec it is in a meaningless Week 18 game. Grant Delpit is not scheduled to come off IR to the first week of the playoffs. So defensively, look, they're going to play tough because it's just what they do. They're a good unit. They play hard. They play focused. They played as a team. But for one thing, the Browns to establish in this game would probably try to just make sure they can run positively. And, when I'm saying that, I'm not talking 200 yards. Can you get to that 4-yard per carry mark? This isn't like years past where, oh, wow, the Browns didn't run for 5.2 yards per carry. You can't set that benchmark with what they currently have going on right now. But, ideally you
Maybe
want
against
right
the
around.
Bengals, you can, Jeff. The way they've been defending the run without.
But
DJ
then
Reader
again, we don't know. But we don't know who's actually going to be toting the rock. That's the other thing as well.
Yeah.
But for the Browns, right around that 4. So you could think, all right, we can get it from 1st and 10 to 2nd and 6. All right, 2nd and 8 to 3rd and 4. Just try to have it be an extension. Look, Joe is on this tear that he is on, and this is one thing I keep trying to tell people is it's gonna. There's a snoozer coming at some point. And yes, he's had a couple of games where he turned it over, but was able to overcome it. But you need, to try to be a little bit more balanced here. And hopefully they can find some way to get that going here a little bit more. Then it would be 2 weeks in a row. And maybe you'd feel a little bit more, I don't know. I wouldn't know if I'd use confident, but you'd feel a little bit more maybe comfortable that, it could be something that could help you in a playoff game.
Great opportunity to build some confidence for that running game, I would say, for the Browns this week. Not to.
I'm going to make my PrizePicks lineup now then.
Bengals fans listening to this are going to be so mad at me. But the Bengals run.
You've never not told the truth, Jake.
The Bengals run D this year, especially without DJ Reader, has been rough. Isaiah Pacheco just tearing runs off last week. When the Bengals go single high, they're getting beat deep vertically. When the Bengals go too high, light in the box, they're getting beat in the run game. The defense is just searching for answers. You lose DJ Reader. That's part of it. You overhaul 2 safeties. the guys they have there just not playing as well. Though Jordan Battle has certainly shown promise, and Dax Hill has even shown promise, but the miscommunications happening in the secondary have been a chronic issue this year. Guys just
I do
getting
believe
beat
I
over
had
the
that,
top.
didn't I? It was not, that was a Bengals talking point for me this year. That was one of the few
For
things
sure.
I thought there was a flaw for this team.
No doubt, but I don't think that anyone who even imagined that being an issue could have imagined it going this poorly with the
True.
investment that the Bengals
Sure.
had at safety. I mean, this isn't like they were going to two undrafted guys at the spot. They had a first round pick and a guy that had started in the NFL. And those guys have made too many mistakes this year, and that's been a problem. They're young at corner too, minus Chidobe Awuzie, but he's coming off an ACL. And so, there have been myriad issues. You talk about things going wrong for the Browns in terms of injuries. Obviously, when you lose your best players to injury and your team is built around your quarterback, you're going to have problems. Something the Browns have done well this year, which is something I've started to allude to on Twitter, and something that I would like the Bengals to steal a little bit, is the way that they're cash heavy and spending more money than any team in the NFL, as Browns fans, I'm sure, are aware, which allows them to make those moves like adding Zadarius Smith, Dalvin Tomlinson, Juan Thornhill to a defense that already has pieces. And that list goes on, right? It's not just those guys, but savvy trades, savvy free agent signings, maximizing draft capital, going and getting Elijah Moore, Amari Cooper, making those extensions and structuring those contracts such that those cap hits you're not going to feel until 2026, 2027. So something that, while the quarterback contract I think the Browns gave out, I mean, we'll see if Deshaun Watson ever lives up to that guaranteed money that the Browns are locked into. Outside of that, they're getting the results because they're paying for the rest of this team, and they've hit on some of these draft picks to have the depth and resilience that they have shown this year. But I really credit the way they've put the defense together, right? I mean, that's by far the strength of the team, one of the best in the NFL. And a lot of that is to do with the depth that they acquired on the defensive line and in that secondary, and the way that they relentlessly attack those positions using various methods. And so while that's not about this game, specifically, it's something about the Browns season that I look at now kind of from a post-mortem perspective for the Bengals. And these are things that the Bengals just don't do. Things that the Browns have done, especially with this ownership group, willingness to spend money and manipulate the cap in the way they have. And for this year, at least, seems like they have the benefit and certainly have a chance to do things in the playoffs. And once you get there, who knows what happens? To finish up the show, let's talk about what we expect to happen in this game, some predictions, and we'll get out of here. That'll be it for crossovers for the Bengals, at least, in 2023. This episode also sponsored by LinkedIn, and at the start of the new year, Happy New Year, by the way, for everyone out there. Maybe one of the last times I'll say it on this podcast this year. Every small business owner is asking the same question. What's the one move in 2024 that I can make to take my business to the next level? LinkedIn Jobs knows that your success depends on the team you surround yourself with, and that's why they have the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. The Bengals could use this offseason with a number of positions they need to fill. It's not just another job board. Maybe it's not for the NFL, but for you, they have a vast network of more than 1 billion with a B professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It's easy when you have access to so many quality candidates. In fact, so easy that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. That's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs number one in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. So right now, if you want to get that job filled, post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. Again, that's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, Jeff. The Browns going to win this game? They're going to play their starters well enough to come out of this game with a W? What do you think?
Well, I got to be honest. Now you're kind of selling me on this. Maybe they don't have to play them the whole time. Who knows? Maybe you look at Pierre Strong and you say, hey, let's give Pierre Strong 15 to 20 carries. He's got long speed. Maybe something could happen. To put a prediction on this, and as you guys know, I mean, these episodes are done a little earlier than the week. If we did them later in the week, they wouldn't draw as many eyes. So obviously we try to do it the best for our viewers and obviously all the supporters here of the Locked On Network. So it's really, really hard to tell. And of course, and I've told my fan base, and we've gone even to a Friday pregame show because it's so hard to tell who's going to be in, who's going to be out, especially each week as the season goes on and on. Of course, the Browns, different circumstances here. Well, I can tell you, I don't think Myles Garrett's going to play. I can tell you, I'm pretty sure I don't think Joe Flacco's going to play. Probably Joe Bitonio won't play. But after that, you're not really too sure. But, the one thing that has kept this Browns team moving the way they are is their depth. I mean, this team is now playing, consistently their fourth and fifth safety. This team has gone 4, 5, 6 deep at cornerback. They have played 3 running backs. They have played a bunch of wide receivers. So it's not like any of these guys that would get extended playing time. It's not like they're going to be no-name guys to Browns fans. These are guys that have filled in a lot of holes for this team this year. I think a lot of it would come down to, basically the state of the mind of the Bengals locker room. Look, there's going to be guys that just don't want to play this game, and understandably so, because there's nothing worse, as far as professional athletes of playing, any contest, any game that truly has no meaning. So, will they go out there? Will they go through the motions? And you never know. And you never know which guy it's going to be or which guy it couldn't be. I would think if everything breaks the way it should, if the Browns sit who they should sit and the Bengals most likely play, going to play it out, you would think that obviously Cincinnati has enough talent, even though Joe Burrow would not be returning for this game. There's still enough talent. This is still the team that had this big turnaround against the Minnesota Vikings, obviously, which made, the excitement level for the team pick up a little bit more. If I think this goes the way it's going to go, it would surprise me if the Cincinnati Bengals don't win it. But, it is week 18 and it's always, regardless, it is always one of the craziest weeks of the NFL season. And there's always that oddball win that nobody sees coming, a la the Houston Texans last year, which at the time, cost them what they thought was going to be the number 1 overall pick. But everything obviously turned out fantastic for the Houston Texans anyway.
Yeah. The Bengals are going to play this game to win, is my impression. I think that the locker room is too strong for guys to really coast too much in this game. I think they have too much pride. But the more important thing to me this week, finishing the season with a win would be fun, does probably cost you draft position. It's a consideration for people that are not making decisions in the organization, of course. But the more important thing to me this week is it's your second shot at a Jim Schwartz defense, even if it's not the starters, even if he does dial things back and keep things vanilla, which he's certainly incentivized to do. He shouldn't show the Bengals anything he didn't show them in week 1. It gives you an opportunity to try different things and try to find concepts that you can get to next year or build on next year. Try to explore where the Jim Schwartz defense might have things that you can exploit, because a lot of the personnel for the Browns is going to be similar next year. There will obviously be overhaul. There will be roster turn for both teams, but exploring concepts for next year is part of what I would be thinking about if I'm the Bengals, within the context of winning the game, which is always going to be the coaching staff's approach. I'd also be trying to find out what you have in some of the rookies that you haven't seen enough of. And this is something we've been talking about since Joe Burrow went down, but then they won a few games. And so the approach kind of skewed towards experience and guys that the coaching staff was more confident in. But Charlie Jones didn't get a single offensive snap in week 17. And for a 4th round pick, who might be at least for the guys currently on the roster, the heir apparent to Tyler Boyd's job, as Tyler Boyd's a free agent, would like to know a little bit more about what you've got there. But Tyler Boyd is also the Bengals' healthiest receiver out of the starters. And so he's going to still play in this game. Andre Yosevach, another rookie, Chase Brown, rookie running back, guys that I would want to see more of. Same for Myles Murphy, your 1st round pick on the defensive side of the ball. He should be playing 80% of the snaps in this game, 70% of the snaps in this game, a lion's share of the snaps in this game. And I don't know that there's necessarily a reason to put Sam Hubbard, who apparently needs offseason surgery, on the field and have him continue to play through injury when you know exactly who Sam Hubbard is, you know exactly what his contract is, you know he's battling through it. Just get more out of these young guys where you still have questions. Get more tape on them. Let them get that experience. Let them get those reps, especially if you're talking about a Browns team at tackle, for Myles Murphy's sake, that is playing some guys deeper on the depth chart. Let DJ Turner play a full game. He hardly played last week because he's had a bit of a rookie wall. And regardless of who's playing for the Browns, I'm interested in getting these guys as much experience as possible if I'm the Cincinnati Bengals. And of course, you still got to win the game, but I do think there needs to be some forward thinking at this point if you're Zach Taylor and the coaching staff for some of these questions. I know it's only 1 week of tape and potentially it's against backup, so you take it all with a grain of salt. But I mean, Jeff, you've obviously seen this position from the Browns' vantage point. You know, you go back a few years when the Bengals rested their starters in this contest in the same exact situation before their Super Bowl run. And there's always an aspect of finding out what you have for the future in these games.
Well, I mean, you try to get everybody out the door feeling good about themselves. And the last thing you want to do is to have anybody all of a sudden now get themselves caught up into a 7, 8 month, 8, 9, 10 month rehab process. And
Right.
like you said with Sam Hubbard, if you know you're going under the knife, let's get you there 1 week sooner, a month sooner from maybe what we originally anticipated would be the case. So hopefully by the time, week 1 rolls around, there are no questions, there are no lingering effects, scar tissue, any, 100% back in business, ready to go. It's a tricky slope here because you're trying to appease your fan base, and obviously probably even tougher because for the Bengals, it is a home game.
Home game that they'll want to win. Battle of Ohio still has stakes. These teams still hate each other. It's still a division game. The Bengals still have goals. There's still a lot of pride involved, like I said a number of times. So it should still be, honestly, a pretty intense football game. I mean, we just saw it with the Chiefs. The Bengals went in and kept it, got out to a lead and kept it to a 1-score game with the Chiefs, who obviously are now the Chiefs of the last few years, this year by any means, but still a good team. They kept it within 1 score, and the Bengals would love to get out of this season, I think, with an AFC North victory. We'll find out. We'll have more for you on this game on Locked On Bengals and Locked On Browns, respectively, as we'll have a little bit more information later in the week on what to expect from these teams in the regular season finale. Until then, thanks for listening to this crossover and have a good one.